begin with the slides because I have so many of them, and I'll just stop and comment as we're going. Are we going to be able to... Well, I don't know. Let's see. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. On the dollar bill, you'll see on the back of the dollar bill, you'll see the symbol on the left-hand side of the bill, which is annuit coeptus, which means our enterprise is now a success, or our enterprise is crowned with success. Annuit coeptus. So you're saying, fine, so you have an enterprise and it's now crowned with success. What enterprise are you talking about? Novas ordo seclorum. Novas is novus, meaning new. Ordo is order, and seclorum is where we get the word secular, meaning the world. So it's new order of the world, the new world order. George Bush's new world order is now a success. But the problem is this was put on the dollar bill back in 1934. 1934 is when the Federal Reserve actually finally took total control of the United States monetary system, and that's when they said it is now a success, because this is a symbol. This is an emblem of a secret society of Freemasons called the Illuminati, the German Bavarian Illuminati. They were a secret society founded in the south of Germany. They were called the Illuminati, the illuminated ones, the enlightened ones. They connected themselves to another group of Freemasons in France, in the south of France, referred to as the PRED Masons. And so this symbol today, while it's on the back of a $1 bill, it is also incidentally on a document in the British Museum and in the Louvre Museum. Both have some of the original writings of that sect of Freemasons in Germany that are today on display, and on one of the documents it has that exact symbol, annuit coeptus novus ordo seclorum, and that was in 1774 that the Bavarian Illuminati drew up their plans for what they were going to do in America and how they were going to do it. And that's not a new. That's not just from 1934. That goes all the way back to 1774. 1775, it's a symbol of a secret society. The triangle at the top with the light emanating from around it is Horus, the god of the ancient Egyptians. Of course, this is an Egyptian pyramid. You don't find pyramids in America, you find them in Egypt. And that pyramid is the symbol of the eye, was in the Egyptian religion Horus, which was the newborn sun. Every morning when the sun came up, his name was Horus. That was the solar divinity in Egypt. Horus was God's son, the light of the world, who is risen. He is our risen Savior, our risen. And so Horus was referred to as God's son, and that's why the light is emanating from around, because it's the sun. The sun is a round eyeball of God, the ancient Egyptians believed. The pupil of God was the sun, and he's watching you. And therefore, the sun was very bright. And so today we even say someone who is extremely intelligent is brilliant. They're bright. And that's why God is, of course, the most brilliant of all. Therefore, the sun is the most brilliant because it's God's eye. All right, anyway, there are 13 layers on the pyramid. And the 1776, a lot of people think is because of the country being founded in 1776. It has nothing to do with that. As I said, this is on a document published back in 1774, 75, and then in 1776 the Roman appeared on it in Europe. So what it amounted to is that the 1776 was when this secret society actually formed into a secret, like any other secret society or fraternal order. There's a few years, and then there's a time when they actually get a charter and come together and actually become an actual organization. And then they get a charter from the government, and they actually are a legal organization. They were in operation in the 1760s, 1770s, but it wasn't until 1776 that they actually made themselves into a coherent order, and it was called the Order and Sect of the Illuminati. They were the basis for what we call today in our country the Bavarian Illuminati was the basis for what we call today the Colombian faction. The Colombian faction of the Illuminati came here right after this government was formed, and that's where we get today Columbia, this Columbia Space Shuttle, Columbia Movies, Columbia Television, Columbia Records, everything, Columbia University. As a matter of fact, Columbia TV, Columbia Broadcasting System, CBS. What is the symbol for CBS? It's the all-seeing eye of CBS. It's the Columbian faction of a secret society that calls themselves the Columbians, and that's why our government is in the District of Columbia, because these guys own our government. They print our money, and they own not only the government, but they own you. You are their property. As a matter of fact, when you're born, your birth certificate, on the bottom of the birth certificate, it says the Department of Commerce. It is a property of the Department of Commerce because you are nothing more than a piece of commercial material. That's why if you're out of work, you don't go to an unemployment office, you go to the office for, what is it called, human resources, because you're just a human resource. So, in other words, these guys print the money, they run the country, and they own you, and they own everything around it. And so they make the laws, and that's why they can decide who can kill who, and who can get away with who, and who can get away with whatever, because they make the laws and they decide, all right? The new order of the world, our enterprise is now a success. As I said to you before, there are 13 layers in this pyramid. There are 13 letters in Enocoeptus. We'll get into that, all of this symbolism later. But 13 is a very important number to this secret society. There are 13 stripes. There are 13 stars here, which make up the Star of David. The 13 berries, there are 13 leaves, 13 arrows. There are 32 feathers here and 33 feathers there. Everything is done in sequence of 13 because 13 is an unlucky number. That's why we say 13 is an unlucky number, because the reason why we say it's unlucky is because it is a divinely inspired number. It has to do with God in the heavens, and therefore it's unlucky for you. And it's not supposed to be used by you. 13, of course, is based on, this is what we call Masonic symbolism. Freemasons designed this dollar bill. Everything is done in sequence of 13, and again, I draw your attention to the fact that you have 13 stars here, which collectively make up the Star of David. There's a reason why. Here, on the dollar bill, just to show you how clever these guys are and how crafty they are, they, on the $1 bill at the top, you'll see this little image right here. I think I can make that. This is just an enlargement. This is an enlargement from a photocopy machine, so it's not really that clear. But if you blow it up from an actual photograph, you'll see it is it's a little owl. It's a symbol of the Bohemian Society. The Bohemian Society meets in California on the last 2 weeks of July of every year. The Bohemian Society is another secret society that was spun off of a larger secret society. The Colombians have a little fun club that they meet for 2 weeks out of the year in Northern California, and they're called the Bohemian Society. They meet in something called the Bohemian Grove. I have pictures, which I don't have with me tonight, but I'm going to have on my next lecture, showing all of the presidents, all of the living presidents, excluding the new one, but all of the living presidents at Bohemian Grove in Northern California, and they're all wearing red and black Ku Klux Klan dress type of regalia, like the Ku Klux Klanners, with the pointed headdress and everything. And, I mean, that's quite a sight to see presidents dressed like Ku Klux Klan members, right? And they're standing in front of a big open pit of fire, and behind them is about a 20 to 25-foot owl behind them. And the article in Elm magazine and Time magazine, I've got 2 or 3 different magazines showing basically the same pictures. It says that the presidents meet with all of the heads of industry throughout the world, all of the heads of state throughout the world, and all of the most important wheeler dealers in this country, and they all meet up in Northern California, and they have rituals where they go before the owl after midnight. And then what a picture you got, with all the presidents dressed up like Ku Klux Klanners with black and red robes on before an owl. And these are your presidents of this country. And the reason why they chose the owl is because the owl is a symbol used in Europe by secret societies because the owl is wise, because it sees things in the dark. And the implication is, of course, that's why they're where they are, because they're very brilliant and they know things that you don't know. So they see things in the dark and they put their little owl on the dollar bill. It's just a clever little thing, but it shows you how these guys think. We get into Masonic symbolism. When you drive by a Freemasons, the Masonic Lodge, you'll see the square and the compass and then the G in the middle. The G is for not God. Everyone thinks it's for God. It's not. It's for geometry. Actually, it goes back even further than geometry. In 1717, it was stood for geometry. But the G has been used by secret societies as far back as ancient Greece, meaning the generative principle, the principle of generation or sexual principle in nature. And so when you see that G, just remember it stands for geometry now. So talking about geometry, here is a typical geometric figure of a three-ring square. The circle, the triangle, the square all have Masonic and spiritual meaning, as you'll see. But here we have the square within the magic circle. Here's the Washington Monument from above, the square within the magic circle. Incidentally, the Washington Monument is the Egyptian obelisk, another, like the pyramid on the dollar bill, another Egyptian symbol, because what America is referred to by the secret societies throughout the world as the New Egypt. That's a term that is given to them in their given to America in their literature, the New Egypt, because our whole laws are based on the ancient magic of Egypt, the white and black magic. That's why your police cars have black and white cars, because it's the idea of black and white magic coming out of Egypt. And, these people that are running this country are really devious. But here we have the mystic star. I think I'm probably going to have to adjust each one. Here's the mystic star, to give you an example, is a seven-pointed star that's used in secret societies. You'll see it all over. Seven-pointed star. Here's Masonic Orders of Fraternity. Again, you'll see it. Golden Dawn, Enochian magic. Incidentally, as I said, this whole thing is going to be like a shotgun effect. I'm covering a lot of stuff. But the old symbol of John Wayne in the movies, remember in the old movies when the pilots were taking off on the aircraft carriers, you'd always see the military doing the thumbs up signal, when the planes were getting ready to take off, the thumbs up. Well, that thumbs up signal was developed for America by Aleister Crowley, one of the most master magicians the world's ever known. And he also developed for England, for Churchill, the victory sign, the V for victory. The V for victory is from the Jewish Masonic symbol for benediction in life. You'll see that in a few minutes too. But just to show you that symbols and emblems don't just happen. They're for a reason. They mean something. Again, we go back to the seven-pointed star. And California Highway Patrol, wait a minute, there it is. California Highway Patrol uses a pointed star. It has to do with the Enochian magic. And it's a magical symbol. The seven, of course, is the same seven, but the reason why we have 7 days of the week. The synagogues have the 7-candle lampstand, the 7-rayed kingdom. Everything is done in 7. It's a very important number. Here's a double cross, which was Roman Freemasonry. The double cross, which is Eastern, what do you call it, the Russian Orthodox, the Greek and the Eastern Orthodox Church uses the double cross, and it's appropriate because that's exactly what we're talking about here, a double cross. If we understand where that word came from, double cross implies that you've been deceived or been cheated or something. It's a symbol that means something, and I'll show you how it is incorporated into politics. The double cross, like here, and of course on Exxon you have the double cross. And I had a letter from the Exxon Corporation asking them if that was the double cross of Eastern Freemasonry, and they said yes. That's why we did it that way. So, I mean, they don't mind telling you if you are smart enough to figure it out. They'll tell you. You write them, and they'll be very honest with you. Here's interesting. This is probably, for familiar to you, the five-pointed inverted pentagram is generally, the inverted pentagram is regarded as something representing evil. The five-pointed pentagram, penta, of course, being five. If you take the arms off of a pentagram, the star, and you have just the inside, you have what is called a pentagon. That's why the United States has a pentagon. The pentagon is a symbol. That's why, incidentally, Chrysler can use the pentagon symbol as a Chrysler symbol, because they're the ones that produced all of the half-tracks and tanks and everything else for the United States during the Second World War for the Pentagon. So they still use the symbol of the pentagon. But what's interesting is that this is an upside down with the point pointing down, the two pointing up, and this is a symbol, of course, as I said, representing the devil, and you see a lot of these killers and rapists and murderers, with the five-pointed pentagram. Here it is again, just showing you how it has its connotation with the pointing down being the devil. Here's the first synagogue in Los Angeles of the B'nai B'rith in 1873, and up here, what do you see, is the inverted pentagram. We're talking about this is the first synagogue in Los Angeles, and they're using an inverted pentagram, which everyone knows is associated from the earliest ages in the Middle Ages with devil worship, okay? Here's a seven-rayed kingdom of God, how the seven flames and the seven candles of light. Incidentally, the seven-candle lampstand in the synagogue, the seven candles represent the seven lights of the heavens: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the sun, and the moon, the seven ancient gods of the ancient world. So when you see the seven candle, that's a very holy seven-candle lampstand. No, it just represents the seven little lights in the heavens. And each one of those lights represented a god. Each one of those gods represented a day. So therefore, we have 7 days of the week to honor the seven-candle lampstand of the seven ancient gods of the world. It's all very metaphysical. It's all very strange, and it's all very well put together, if you understand how it works. Here's the shell oil. To give you an idea, let me back it up. I moved too quick on that. Here's the Panorama Mall, has an emblem, a symbol, and I put the shell symbol next to it so you can see what we're talking about here in shell is the sun rising between two triangles. The sun rising between, that's a sunrise, it's not a shell. Just like the Toyota, you see the sun rising, and I wrote a letter to the Shell Oil Corporation, and I sent them pictures like this, and I had some extensive research material I sent with them and said, is this true? Is this not, in fact, a shell, but it is a sunrise, which is a symbol of a secret society in Europe, and it is used in this way? And they said, yes. They wrote back and said, yes, it is a secret society symbol. It's been used for the last 100 years. Prince Bernard of the Netherlands was a member of this secret society. And so when you drive by a shell, just remember, it's not a shell, it's a sunrise of a secret society, and I'll get into that, what it means later. And it's just to show you how emblems and symbols all around us, and we don't even know what they mean. Here's another one. The eight-pointed star is two squares superimposed on each other. Get it better. There's a square here, and then a square here, and it's called the double square of Freemasonry. The reason for the double square, the first square means that you play fair and square. You know, when you play baseball down at the town square, and if you, anything which is legitimate and right according to the secret societies is square. You play fair and square. And if you go to jail, they'll give you 3 square meals. It's fair. It's the right thing to do, right? And so the whole idea is square means that everything which is right and legal and just, and everything's squared. So that's why even in court they say, well, your testimony doesn't square with the facts. It's square means things which are right and correct. When you superimpose another square, the implications of the second square, which you will see, means disorder. It's the intertwining of both order and disorder, meaning that you have the power over what is right and correct, and you also have the power over disorder and things which are not right and which are not correct. And so the same people control both chaos and order. Incidentally, that's why you have, well, I better not get into that because that's going to come up in a minute. Here it is again, the double square Freemasonry. The chevron. Chevron oil is actually the double square of Freemasonry. See, this is two squares. Oh, wait a minute. This is two squares. What this chevron is, and that's the word chevron. You'll see on the military, the police wear them on their arms, and the military wears the insignias of power. They're called chevrons because they are squares. It's a box. That's a box, and this is a box, and this box is sitting on top of that box. And if you draw a line, for a triangle back here, you'll see it's two square boxes sitting on top of each other. It's referred to as the double square or the chevron of Freemasonry, the double square of Freemasonry, okay? And so it implies that the powers that be in this world have both control over revolution, trouble, anarchy, and they have control over good government and over righteous government. So they can do whatever they want. You want to have a good government or bad government, they can do the same. They can do whatever they want because they got the money and they got the power. Here in England, of course, it's more appropriate in England, is the double square of Freemasonry in London at the Parliament. It even says the octagonal Central Library in London has the double square of Freemasonry. And of course, I think it's appropriate there because they do, in fact, finance and organize and direct all over the world. All kinds of bloodshed and violence all over the world is being organized, directed, and financed by the United States government and the British government together. Britain and America are the reason for the violence and the chaos that we're seeing throughout the world today. In Yugoslavia, it's all been planned. This is all part of something that the United States is doing in the Middle East right now, and Yugoslavia is going to pay for it. Again, we have the double square. All right. Here is the double square of Freemasonry worn by the Queen. And this square is, the Masonic square is referred to as the Knights of Malta square. This one is the British square of Freemasonry. The Knights of Malta, you'll see it's like four little triangles coming together, but they don't actually have a point in the middle. It's just a round or a nothingness in the middle. You'll see that again in Arco, where the four little points come together, but nothing in the middle. The Knights of Malta is, the square of Knights of Malta is the pyramid from the top, looking down on the pyramid of Egypt without the capstone. That's because, remember, on the dollar bill, the capstone is not connected to the body of the pyramid. So here is flying over the top of the pyramid, looking down on the Great Pyramid, you don't have a point because the chief cornerstone is not on the pyramid. Actually, and I just threw this in, I don't know why, but I did. Here's Under Life in Fascism. I wanted to make the point about political symbols. We hear a lot of people talking on radio and television about fascism and how bad the fascists are and fascism this and fascism that. Well, in most cases, fascism or fascists have come to power after the nation has suffered an economic collapse. Are we having problems economically or what? Right? A military defeat, Vietnam, and some other disaster. The fascist party wins mass support by promising to revive the economy and restore national pride. And that's exactly what the government's saying today. They need to restore national pride. Get Clinton in there to be president. And no one seems to realize Bill Clinton, as a Rhodes Scholar, trained in England and London, England, and Oxford University, bought and paid for by the Rockefeller Foundation, financed and organized his education. He is nothing more than a yes man for the power elites in this country. They want another Kennedy because he looks good. Personal liberties are severely limited under a fascist government, which is, I'm saying that's what we have here. And the government also controls newspapers or radio and other means of communication. That's why I'm not on nationwide television, right? And it issues propaganda to promote its policies, and boy, this government does that. Let's see. Oh, yeah, wait a minute. This is interesting. A secret police force crushes any resistance. I like the word crush because that's what they do. You get in their way, they come out and beat your brains out, right? So, here is a symbol of fascism. I thought I had one. Yeah, here it is. The French fascism. This is the symbol for fascism. A bundle of sticks with a hatchet head. Here is another. Here's another. Incidentally, behind a red shield. He's standing here. It says Robin Hood. Why? Because the red shield is German for Rothschild. The Rothschilds of England were a German Jewish family in England who took over the Bank of England and took over 5 other banks in Europe and became known as the Rothschild banking dynasty of the world, the richest banking dynasty on earth, okay? Rothschild in German. Roth is red and Shield is flag or a shield. So Rothschild is... Fascist was an authoritarian political movement that developed in Italy, several other European countries in 1919. Its name was derived from the fasces, this thing here, an ancient Roman symbol of authority consisting of a bundle of rods and an axe. That's incidentally why we had Axis powers in the Second World War. Here's the bundle of sticks with the axe, and this is on the symbol. This is on the back of the dime, the symbol for fascism on the back of the American dime. There it is. I mean, this is a fascist country, and it says fascism is a dirty, evil government that takes over and controls the people. Well, of course it does. That's what's happening to us. We've been taken over and controlled by fascists. And why? And here it is, the President of the United States standing here giving a State of the Union message, and what's on each side of him? The fascists. This is in the Congress. In the Congress, there are symbols of power for the President is 2 large fasces, and very few people have ever even noticed them. They're looking at this guy, and they don't even see these symbols of world fascist power, okay? In case you're so blind you can't see, I blew one up and make sure you can see it. That is a fasci. A bundle of sticks with a hatchet head, and it was used in Rome. Let me explain why it's a bundle of sticks. The idea was in the Roman Empire that Rome could not police the world. What Rome needed to do was to collectivize a police force. That's why George Bush keeps talking about it's not just us in the Middle East, not just us in the Middle East, it's a conglomerate, it's a group of us. We merely represent a contingent of a group of nations there. It's not just America. That's the concept of fascism. It's not one stick, it's many sticks joined together with a hatchet head. So one person, one government can't do it, Bush says. What we need is a united nations where we can all unite our sticks together, and now we got power. Now everybody crawls on their knees and kiss the boots because they have a collective consensus of fascist rulers. All these guys get together. That's like the East Side Mafia getting together with the West Side and bringing the New York boys and some of the families out on the West Coast, and let's put this thing together and really rape these people good. And that's what the symbol of fascism means. They now have an axe tied together with a consensus of power. We have a fascist world government right here in America. Here's the United States Senate. 2 fasces on the Senate. I mean, even in playing cards, you got fasces with the king and the jack. That means something. There's a reason why the ace is the highest card in the deck. That's something else. Aces are always higher than the king for a reason. Here's another symbol, a geometric symbol used in Freemasonry by these secret societies. A triangle, the pyramid, within the circle again. And incidentally, the pyramid or the triangle is important because it goes back to the old pyramid of Cheops, which incidentally, I don't know if you know this, but the big pyramid called the Pyramid of Cheops in Egypt has no peak. It has no point. It has no point on it. It's the chief cornerstone of the point never was there. And the circle represents, of course, the sun. This is the sun, always the circle. And it has to do with Stonehenge. Stonehenge is a symbol for the sun in the old ancient Anglo-Saxon Germanic secret society. So that's why Stonehenge and the pyramid are connected. The numerology in Stonehenge and the pyramid are both the same. There's a lot of interesting stuff there when you get into the numerology of the pyramid and Stonehenge. But here's an example of how symbols are used. All right, here's a dictionary of Freemasonry, and here, I'll blow it up. You'll see the triangle and the circle again, and here's the cross and the crown, and we'll go through that in Holy Bible, and the G again for God, which is actually geometry. But this is the triangle and the circle, okay? It's because of the triangle and the circle here. And it has to do with God. It's a symbol of God. It's used in Freemasonry. It's, again, we'll go through, here's the Bible, Star of David, and up here at the top, oh, and here it is. But over here on the bottom it's called the Royal Arch You may have heard of that in Freemasonry, the Royal Arch degree. And there it is again. And here you'll see it used in churches. The School of Theology at Claremont. Yeah. You'll see it right there. Used in churches because Claremont School of Theology is a Masonic college. It's financed, organized, and directed by a secret society in Europe. Yeah. And but people don't realize that because it's a church. It has to be holy. And there's nothing holy about it. This is a very powerful secret societies operating throughout the world behind our government and behind governments throughout the world, and they have tied themselves in and set up what they call a religious establishment. And the religious establishment is nothing more than a front man for a very powerful secret societies operating in the world. So they may look holy, but you better do your homework. There's more to religion than meets the eye. Here's the King and Queen of England with the triangle and the circle above them. And incidentally, this is a whole different subject of the British royalty. The reason why we call them the royal family comes from Egypt. Osiris, Isis, and Horus were the original trinity in Egypt that was referred to in Egypt as the Holy Family, the royal family. That's where they get the royal family, because of the triangle, the pyramid of Egypt, with God's son, Horus, rising. And so there's nothing holy about these people at all, okay? And when the King of England, interesting, when the King of England becomes king, the Archbishop of Canterbury, like we have our religious, I don't even know who it is, but when the King of England is crowned king, listen to what the Archbishop of Canterbury has the king say in his inauguration ceremony. Prince Charles, if he becomes king, incidentally he won't, but if he did become king, would say upon taking the throne, the Archbishop says, "You are now being crowned King of England for Jesus Christ. You are sitting on the throne of David for Jehovah, the God of the Old Testament. You are, in fact, Messiah waiting for, or Shiloh, who is waiting for the Messiah to come back. So you are going to rule God's kingdom until Jesus Christ comes back." That's what the king is told in his initiation rites. The King of England sits on the throne of the God of the Old Testament for Jesus Christ. He represents God's kingdom. And of course we understand that God's kingdom is going to unite the world in some wonderful paradise condition, and therefore the England is referred to as the United Kingdom. So this is it gets very, very interesting when you see where royalty comes from. They actually believe that God put them there. They're a holy family. But the whole thing is based on Egypt, pyramids, triangles. To give you an idea, El Salvador has the triangle, and they have the circle and triangle. Incidentally, let me go back here. There's a little thing, I'm going to have to get into that on my next one because I don't have any slides to really show you, but there's something called a Phrygian cap of liberty. It's a cap that the old French Illuminati Freemasons wore when they overthrew the French monarchy and the French Revolution. You'll read about in school the French Revolution, those guys who actually overthrew the French government and the French Revolution, they all wore a little cap. It was like a stocking cap, a red stocking cap. And that was a symbol of something called the Phrygian cap of liberty. It goes back to the ancient Roman societies in ancient Rome. And I'm not going to get into it because it's a very interesting subject on this Phrygian cap of liberty, and you'll see it many times and what it means. But the point I'm making here is that the triangle is within the circle even in Nicaragua. And, wait a minute, I'm missing something here. Nicaragua and El Salvador, right. And this is the two countries we had a lot of trouble with in war down in Central America because of this symbol here. That's what is causing the war, is this symbol in the middle. It's called the Phrygian or Phrygian cap of liberty. Just shows you how the triangle and the circle is used. Here's another symbol in Freemasonry. On the Bible, you'll see the cross and the crown. The cross and the crown, of course, is the cross of Jesus within the crown of salvation or whatever. But if you go back to Freemasonry again, you'll see the cross and the crown. The cross and the crown is actually on a chart of Freemasonry, the Scottish and York Rite. We have two rites of Freemasonry in America. The two most important ones are the Scottish and York Rite. The York Rite comes from England, York, England. And when the York Rite came from England, and again I'm saying that this is like a shotgun effect. I'm just making you aware of some interesting little connections. We can get into all of this later. But the York Rite comes out of York, England, and the Duke of York, Prince Andrew, is the Duke of York. The Duke of York, the York Rite Freemasons come to America. When America was founded, the first thing they did when the Columbians came over, the York Rite Freemasons came over. And they set up what they call New York. And New York is the Empire State. That's why we have an Empire State Building. New York is the Empire State because it's the new state of the empire, of the New World. It's the New World's Empire State. And the Empire Strikes Back. We get into George Lucas, Steven Spielberg with their Empire Strikes Back and all of that kind of stuff. Because there's symbolism in these Indiana Jones and all that, Star Wars stuff. But anyway, here's a Scottish Rite. They have 33 degrees. That's the reason why you have degrees of Freemasonry. See, the first, second, and third degree. At the third degree, that's why, incidentally, when you're in court or the cops pick you up, they give you the third degree. Right? Reason because the police department is a Masonic order. They wear the Masonic symbols of power on their arm. Incidentally, that's why they call the armed forces, because they use their arm to beat your brains out. And here's the 3 layers of Freemasonry, first, second, and third degree. They're giving you the third degree. Then once you become a third degree Mason, you can either go into the Scottish Rite or you can go into the York Rite. The Scottish Rite is referred to as the Egyptian Rite. Everything that they teach and believe is based on Egypt. Or you go into the York Rite and everything they teach and believe is based on the old York order, which is supposedly called Christian. Right? So at here again, you have the Royal Arch Masons. Royal Arch is very important with the triangle and the circle, and there's the Knights Templar emblem again with the cross and the crown. The Order of the Red Cross is one of them, and here's the Order of Malta. When you're giving money to the Red Cross, just remember where it's going. It's going to a Masonic order. And that's why, incidentally, Red Cross can go behind enemy lines during wartime and negotiate for prisoners. Why can they go behind enemy lines and you can't? Because they're part of the war. They are part of the establishment. They operate on both sides. So we got Royal Arch Masons with the triangle representing the pyramid within the sun. We got the Red Cross, the Order of Malta, and that's why Bush went to the island of Malta. They have this summit, and the summit is the top of a mountain, and the pyramid is the old mountain of God. And here's the York Rite with the Order of Knights Templar again. Now here is, I'm just showing you this so that, here is the, again, it says the pilgrimage to Virginia of the Knights Templars with the cross and the crown, and the Star of David with the Masonic handshake. That's the Knights Templar Masonic Order, and here it is on the Watchtower Society of Jehovah's Witnesses. So a lot of people, poor Jehovah's Witnesses, they have no idea in the world that the man that founded their order, Charles Taze Russell, was in fact a York Rite Freemason. He was financed out of London, England by Lord Philippi de Rothschild. His money came from England to found an order called British Israel Freemasonry. He is nothing more than a Freemasonic conspirator to help the masters in England take over our banking system and our government and have everybody prepared to crawl on their knees and wait for God's kingdom, and Jehovah's going to come to save you. Don't bet on it. Cross and the Crown Lutheran Church. That's many places. Kingdom Identity Ministries, we got the Cross and the Crown. It's found in different churches throughout. Here it is again. All the, these are like what am I trying to say? A catalog for religious symbols. And here's a grinning Cheshire cat with his and he's got the cross and the crown. So when you go to churches and you see this cross and the crown, just know there ain't nothing holy about it, and don't represent nothing holy. It represents a very powerful secret society. Same people who are printing your money are directing the churches. Freemasonic orders. Here's Christian Science, cross and the crown. Mary Baker Eddy's husband was a Freemason in Germany. He was connected to the cross and the crown of the York Rite. You find it everywhere. And I'm just making a point, and the point I'm making here is that so many things that we see in churches we think are religious, we haven't got the faintest idea where these churches came from and what they mean. Here it is on church rings, commitment to Christ, and where they have Masonic symbols on the... Anyway, here's right here in Pasadena, the Methodist Hospital right over here. We're walking distance. Methodist Hospital, Southern California, Masonic emblems from Europe with the cross and the crown. And they're called, incidentally, those this is interesting. Those Freemasons who are operating out of hospitals are referred to as Knights Hospitallers. They are the Knights Hospitallers. They are the ones that have control over the health in America. The American Medical Association, the American Health Associations, all hospitals come under the Knights Templars, or what they call the Knights Hospitallers. So when you hear all this crying and complaining on the news by the politicians talking about the absolutely prohibitive cost of medical care, what they're saying is our brothers in the Knights of Hospital, the Knights Hospitallers, need some more money. So they're jacking up everything. We're being had. We're being had by some very powerful secret societies that control our very life. Everything we see, everything we hear, our food is dominated by them. They're putting chemicals in our food. They're killing our people. They're beating people up in the street. They don't really care. These are fascists. They don't care a thing about you or anybody else. They have only one thing in mind, and that is the direct control over the human race. It's called the New World Order. Here's a community Bible church over in Van Nuys, off of Van Nuys Boulevard. Incidentally, you'll see pyramids all over it and triangles. And here's the front. And inside, you can't see it too well. I got to do a better picture of that. But anyway, it's the cross and the crown. Santa Anita Apostolic Church, cross and the crown. It's right here on the Santa Anita Boulevard. Here's another one. This is over here on Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena. It's I think it's a Presbyterian church or a Methodist, I'm not sure. Inside, here it is again. And so when people see all of this, it looks very holy. What you don't understand is that this comes from the Middle Ages. These are symbols out of the Middle Ages of secret societies of Freemasons. These are Freemasonic emblems, the colors. There's a reason for the blue. There are a reason for colors. There's a reason for the symbols. It hadn't got a thing to do with the Lord. It hadn't got anything to do with anything that's holy. These symbols come out of the Middle Ages, out of Germany and France and Spain and England. And as they move into our country and taking over our land and subverting us into slaves, they give us all of these symbols and emblems with their Masonic order of Knights Templars. And they think they have pulled it off. But like Lincoln said, you can fool some of the people some of the time and most of the people all the time, but you can't fool everybody all the time. They haven't fooled me. I've been on this for 35 years. I got associated with this through my mother's uncle when I was a little kid. He worked at the Vatican Secretary of State's office as a civilian. And every 3 or 4 years he'd come home and talk about all of this stuff. So I grew up listening to this. And here is a Sovereign Grand Commander's flag for World Freemasonry. Okay? And on the supreme flag, which is, of course, they accepted all over the world. Incidentally, if you go into a court today, when you go into a court, if you see an American flag in any court, state or federal court, if it has a gold fringe around the flag, do you know what that means? There's a very good reason why certain flags have a gold fringe. In other courts, the flag does not have a gold. Happy. We're at war. You see that gold? That means sovereignty. We are at war. Gold fringe means martial law. So when you go into a courtroom to pay your fines or ticket or anything, and you do with something called, but the words ordo ab chao. You'll see it, ordo ab chao. You'll see it in Masonic literature, the double-headed eagle. Incidentally, you've probably seen the double-headed eagle many times. The double-headed eagle in Freemasonry means the Masonic order is symbolized by the eagle. Incidentally, we have an eagle as our symbol in America. But the double-headed eagle means that it is a Masonic order that has jurisdiction, like the eagle of America has jurisdiction over us. The double-headed eagle implies, according to Masonic literature and all their reference work, implies that the Masonic order has jurisdiction over the Eastern world and over the Western world, over the East and West. So in Russia and China and all those bad, evil people over there, as opposed to Western Europe and America and England and the West, it's still the same game. Ordo ab chaos, in Latin, order out of chaos. So what we're talking about here is these people are causing, financing, organizing, and directing chaos. And for what purpose? To bring about a new order. To keep you frightened, keep you scared, keep you broke, and keep you on your toes. And while they're keeping this chaos going, they are instituting a new order, and you didn't even know it. In other words, it was bad enough as it was. Now it's really going to get bad. So, order of chaos again. You see it everywhere. Incidentally, you'll always, when you see Masonic orders, you drive by and you see in front of Masonic lodges, you'll always see the double-headed eagle perched on a sword, always on a sword, because they said real power comes from the sword. And that's the way you create chaos, is with the sword, with violence. And out of that violence, ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. That's why they had television shows, comedy shows a few years ago on television. One was Get Smart. While they tell you, anytime somebody's telling you get smart means that you're implying you're an idiot. Get smart, wake up. Get smart. What were the two sides in Get Smart? One was chaos, and the other was control. Right? Get smart, wake up. This is what's going on here. It's a scam. So when you see that everything, all this rioting and all this killing, and the gangs killing, that's all being planned. This government is planning This government is planning gang warfare. They want the gangs to kill each other. That's part of the strategy. It's incredible. Ordo ab chaos. Anyway, order from chaos to control. Here's a California Senate, California legislature, 1953, Senate Investigating Committee, published by the state of California. Okay, and it says, so-called modern communism is apparently the same hypocritical and deadly world conspiracy to destroy civilization that was founded by the secret order of the Illuminati in Bavaria, 1776, May 1st. The World Revolution conspiracy appears to have been so well organized and to be ever continuing and ever on the alert to take advantage of every opportunity presenting itself so that the conspirators could create It is significant in this connection that as early as 1783, when unsettled conditions and dissatisfaction in some quarters had arisen in the American colonies, subversive anonymous sermons were circulated among the colonial army to incite dissatisfaction and rebellion. George Washington immediately called the army together, and in addressing them, he used this significant language. We're talking about 1783. George Washington said this, quote, "My God, what can this writer have in view by recommending such measures? Can he be a friend to the army? Can he be a friend to this country? Rather, is he not an insidious foe, some emissary perhaps from New York?" So George Washington already realized that there are conspirators who are planning our demise, and they're operating out of New York. Then the Senate goes on to say, it is plain that Washington believed the then center of this secret conspiracy, so far as this country was concerned, to be located in New York, and felt it to be his duty to make such a direct statement. So what we're talking about here is as far back as 1783, we've known what was going on. Well, I better go on to the next quote because it'll make sense. The recognition of May 1st, 1776 as the founding date, which is on the bottom of the pyramid on the dollar bill, 1776, has nothing to do with founding this country in 1776. It has to do with the founding of the Illuminati in 1776. The recognition of May 1st, May Day. That's why military, when a plane's going down or there's trouble, they call it, it's a Mayday call. It's Mayday. Mayday means trouble. That's right, because these people are trouble. They cause chaos, violence, revolutions throughout the world, bloodshed, in Afghanistan, in Yugoslavia. Anytime these people decide they want you, that's trouble. It's May Day, and that's the symbol for them was May 1st. That's when their conspiracy was formed in 1776. Now, the recognition of May 1st, 1776 as the founding date of this World Revolution conspiracy is not difficult to understand when it is realized that May Day is frequently celebrated even in recent times by rioting and bloodshed on a worldwide scale. That's why the Soviet Union always had their May Day parades, because the Soviet Union was always going out and killing people and murdering people, and they would celebrate on May 1st, because what they were saying on May Day was that they're celebrating the world conspiracy. They're celebrating the world Masonic conspiracy that is financing the Soviet Union. And incidentally, and as it says, it's often celebrated, even in recent times, by rioting. That's when we had our last riot in Los Angeles, was on May 1st, May Day. I mean, the thing that happened in Los Angeles was set up. The CIA and the federal government set up what we call the riot in Los Angeles. They set up those four guys to, the whole thing was a setup. Dick Gregory even got into this for a 3-hour talk on KPFK, where this whole thing of Rodney King beating was a setup. It was all planned. It was purposely planned. It was purposely designed because they knew the people would be angry and would riot. It was a setup. The whole thing. That's why in wartime, we call in this country in wartime, generals talk about the theater of war, the Pacific theater, the Atlantic theater, the European theater. The theater implies it's an act. It's a plan. It's just a theater. It's entertainment. You know, that's all it is. It's a theater of war. In other words, when you see all this violence and raping and killing going on in Czechoslovakia or Romania or wherever the hell it's going on, or in Yugoslavia, it's all been planned. Now, what do you think the Pentagon is all about? They're sitting there planning how they're going to take over different countries, what they need from certain countries. They're breaking the monetary systems of the world. It was all being well planned. There ain't nothing, like Roosevelt said, there ain't nothing happening by chance in politics. Anyway, in issuing this manifesto, the communist conspirators evidently believed the time had arrived when, with the aid of ignorant victims, a worldwide takeover could be accomplished, and there were not enough ignorant victims then, and the expected coup failed. The conspirators thereupon conceived a plan for the future of supplementing the long-established secret conspiracy in existence since May 1st, 1776, with an unremittent public campaign for victims among the ignorant of all nations, and in an attempt to hide from view the underlying hypocritical conspiracies existing since May 1st, 1776, it was decided that in such public campaign, the manifesto of 1848 should be heralded as the founding date for communism, and Karl Marx falsely proclaimed as its author. What this is saying is that we are taught in school that communism is directly caused by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels writing the Communist Manifesto. In 1848, Communist Manifesto was written by Karl Marx. No such a thing. History tells you that it was written, the Communist Manifesto was written in 1776 in Europe by an order of Freemasonry called the Illuminati. And it wasn't until 1848 that they decided, well, we better tell everybody that somebody else did it. So we'll say Karl Marx came up with it in 1848. No way. What we call communism is nothing more than a plan by the banking elements in England and America to divide the world between two divisions, to divide the world between the East and the West, so that you can have war. You've got to have war, chaos, before you can bring control. That's why the United States financed Adolf Hitler. The United States financed the Soviet Union. Soviet Union is called the Soviet Union, not because it's a union of states, it's because it was a unionized under International Labor Organization, the ILO, which was originally called the IWW, the International Workers of the World, which because they wanted to unionize all labor. Painters Union, the Carpenters Union, the Soviet Union, it's unionizing labor. And once you can unionize labor, get control over monetary and labor systems, now you can have them war with each other, and you've got control over them. These people are very, very smart. They've got this stuff together. And here's George Washington's, the writings of George Washington from the U.S. government printing office. from original manuscripts. Here George Washington says, I have heard much of the nefarious and dangerous plan and doctrines of the Illuminati. It was not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and the principles of Jacobinism had not spread in the United States, on the Masons and the Illuminati. In the United States, on the contrary, no one is more truly satisfied of this fact than I am. So he's saying, you don't have to tell me about the Illuminati and what they're doing in New York. I already know. Here is interesting, though. On the Masons and the Illuminati, George Washington writing said, individual Freemasons of them, in other words, he's saying in this letter to the man who wrote it, I don't believe all Freemasons in the whole world are evil. I don't think all Freemasons in the whole world are bad. But I know what you're talking about when you say that there is a secret conspiracy operating out of New York and in America and throughout the world. Nobody is more truly convinced of that than I am. Of course, there's a lot of ignorant people in Freemasonry that don't know any of this. But that individuals of them may have done it. I'm going to paraphrase this because it's an old English. Washington is saying, the idea I meant to convey was that I did not believe that the lodges of Freemasons in this country had, as societies, endeavored to propagate the diabolical tenets of the first, the Illuminati, or the principles, the pernicious principles of the latter, the Jacobins, if they are susceptible to separation. But that there are individuals in the Freemasonic order who may have done this, or that the founder or instruments employed to found the democratic societies of the United States, later to become known as the Democratic Party. The founder or the instruments employed to found the Democratic Party in the United States may have had these objects in mind and actually had the separation of the people from their government in view is too evident to be questioned. What he's saying is that the Democratic Party was founded by a secret society of Freemasons that have one thing that they wanted to do, and that is divide the people from their government. Because before, under a Republican form of government, the people had total control because they were sovereigns. Under a democratic system, when you elect a Democrat, they were already had the idea of separating the people from their government. You just elect some airhead here and send him to Washington. But what you don't know is that this person is not even allowed to run for office unless he is one of them. He's not even allowed to run for Senate or for the state or for any position without being a part of this thing. So if you want to run for office, you just go out and try and see how well you can run for office without being a part of the Illuminati or the Freemasonic order of things. If you don't belong to the right club, Jack, you ain't going nowhere, period. Here's a congressional report from the congressional hearings on steps toward British Union, again, Union, steps toward British Union, a world state and international strife. I'll run that back by you again. British Union, a world state. What are you talking about, a world state? You're talking about a one world order, a world state, an international war. And on page 13, this is a very interesting document. 28 pages long. But on page 13 it says, let me call your attention to the fact that on the reverse of the Great Seal of the U.S., which appears on dollar bills, you will find the exact symbol of the British Israel World Federation movement. This symbol is also carried on literature of other organizations promoting a world government and a world religion. At the bottom of the circle surrounding the pyramid, you'll find the words Novus Ordo Seclorum. It is the new order that was advocated by Clinton Roosevelt several hundred years ago. So this is a symbol of a thing called the British Israel World Federation. It is a connection between England and America and the Masonic orders of both and how they put this thing together. That's why, I guess, again, we say that England is God's kingdom, the United Kingdom. And as a matter of fact, there's a very big difference. A lot of people don't know this. There's a very big difference between being an English and British. British comes from a Hebrew word, Brit. In Hebrew means a contract or a covenant. And ish in Hebrew means man. Therefore, British means the covenant man, man of the covenant. What covenant? It's the new covenant, God's covenant for a kingdom through Christianity, through God's kingdom, the United Kingdom, the British. And the British with America are involved in something called British Israel Freemasonry, and all these dopes in Washington, D.C., and these conspirators in Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, are nothing more than frontmen for a very powerful secret society is preparing us to accept something that's called God's kingdom. Remember, Armageddon's coming, the end of the last days, the end of the world, Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormon Church, the end of the world. You better do your homework. There's something going on here. That's why we have a 51st state. Incidentally, a legal term in this country for a state is called the state of, like the state of Alabama, the state of New York, the state of Florida. State of is a legal term according to International Maritime Admiralty law. That's why we have a state of Israel. Israel's not a country, it's not a nation, it's called the state of Israel because it was set up as part of our federal system. It was set up in 1948 by the United States and England, and it was referred to under International Maritime Admiralty law as the state of Israel because it is an actual state of the federal system of America. So you better figure out why too. There's a reason for it. Here is a symbol taken from a Freemasonic book. They didn't know I had, and here's the fires of revolution and trouble, anarchy, the cauldron of fire, they call it in Freemasonry, the revolutionary trouble. And here's the pyramid with the Masonic. And down here you have three contingents or three factions of Freemasonry, always at war with each other. You have the Pope, which is incidentally, the Catholic Church is a Jewish Freemasonic movement, founded in the Middle Ages in the year 325 by Constantine. It is a Jewish Freemasonic political movement. That's why the Pope wears the little yarmulke. He wears the little yarmulke with the cardinals. They wear the tellus. All of these symbols and emblems in the Catholic Church are nothing but Jewish Freemasonry. Huh? Kabbalistic Freemasonry. You'll see, I'll give you a lot of examples of that very quickly. This represents Rome, or the Roman Freemasonic orders, and incidentally, you'll see a lot of this stuff in Godfather 3. In the movie Godfather 3 is a lot of this stuff talking about the secret societies and the Freemasons operating in the Vatican and all that kind of stuff. And, incidentally, the guy who directed those shows and put them on the Godfather series, Francis Ford Coppola. I was doing some research at the police department down at Parker Center, and in their files, they have a whole file on Francis Ford Coppola. Francis Ford Coppola's father was Carmine Coppola, who was a Don in the Mafia in the city of Corleone, Italy. Huh? Corleones? That was his father. His father was a Don in the Mafia in Corleone, Italy. That's how you can make such a great movie and know so much about it. Hell, his father is the Don in Corleone. You know? So, anyway, incidentally, I think Francis Ford Coppola is great, but I mean, he's very knowledgeable. He's put stuff together, and you better figure out where he's getting all that money to make, Apocalypse Now and all the, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Where's he getting the money from? I mean, where do these people get the money from? They're getting it from secret societies and fraternal orders that are the powers behind our government, okay? So here we got the Vatican, we got the Knights of Malta, and the King of England. And they're all in there working up the fires of trouble all over the world. Here's the Pope with the yarmulke. Why, I ask you, are all of the politicians and all these world leaders all on their knees to the Pope? It's not because they're Catholic. I mean, here's the Emperor of Japan, Japanese, and he's on his knees, or getting ready to. So how come these people are all on their knees to the Pope? It has nothing to do with the fact that he's Catholic. It has to do with the fact of who he represents. He represents a very powerful secret society referred to as the Knights of Malta. And in world Freemasonry, there is something we call today an unwritten code of ethics among the thieves. I mean, you may be the East Coast family and the West Coast family, but when you meet, there's a certain respect for each other. So the Eastern nations, they respect that he represents a very powerful secret society of the West. And so it's only honorable to show respect. It doesn't mean we can't have a war. It doesn't mean we can't kill each other. But this is a state affair, so we all on our knees, and these symbols here, the stripes going over the shoulders, all are Masonic emblems. They always represent who you are in the Masonic structure of things in world Freemasonry.
Is that why they killed the 30-day Pope?
That's it, exactly. That's why they killed John Kennedy, too, because the Pope, they were afraid. Freemasonry in this country was very much afraid that John Kennedy was going, the old Joe Kennedy was going to start a Catholic dynasty in America. And that's one thing they're not going to have in America, is a Catholic dynasty. You can't help it once in a while a Catholic will get elected or something, but we didn't have no dynasty here. I mean, every time you turn around, Joe Kennedy had, 15 kids? My God, he was going to have kids galore. And he wanted to have all his sons be president, and, congressmen, senators, always going to be a Kennedy doing something every time you turn around. So somebody decided to take Kennedy out. It's interesting that Kennedy, all the stuff around Kennedy's assassination is just filled with secret societies, fraternal orders. All you need to do is see JFK and you know there's something going on here. Anyway, here you got the Knights of Malta on Nazi soldiers with Adolf Hitler. That's because Adolf Hitler was connected with the Vatican. The Vatican signed concordance with Adolf Hitler. And that's why Mussolini and Adolf Hitler and the Pope, they were the enemies of Jewish Freemasonry in America. That's why if they're going to kill a few Jews in Europe, who the hell cares? I mean, that's business, you know. That's why Hitler was killing Jews, is because the Vatican was an opposing branch of Freemasonry, which was a Gentile Roman branch of Freemasonry, which is why Rome, Mussolini of Italy, joined together with Adolf Hitler because they were trying to reestablish what is called an Aryan system of laws and science in the world as opposed to the New World Order in America. So when you see all these things happening on a world scale, they're not just happening. There's reasons for all of this stuff. You know, here's Nazi officials. They look like some of the people who run this country. They're just like it, too. And they look about as, yeah, don't they? Don't they look like governors and senators and whatever? And so here's an emblem right here. This is the Knights of Malta. They all wear the Knights of Malta symbol, Masonic Order of Malta, Roman Freemasonry. But then down here is this is the Military Order of Malta. Incidentally, when you see the round circle with the swastika was the old Aryan Hindu symbol for the sun. Like the Egyptians had Horus, well, the ancient Aryans of India had the swastika for the sun. Incidentally, the swastika for the sun for the Aryans and the Buddhists, the broken legs went the opposite way. Hitler inverted them and went the opposite way. The Aryans had it going clockwise, which meant something spiritually in the esoteric. Hitler broke the legs and made it go backwards, which meant it's going back to the east instead of going to the west. So he was reestablishing the old Aryan Empire on the ancient Eastern occultism. All of this has to do with secret societies and subversive movements. But anyway, this Knights of Malta religious emblem here on this one is interesting because when you enlarge it, I think I need to, that's pretty good. You'll see that it is the same one as the other one we showed on the before, Knights of Malta, but you'll see it's two circles. There's an outside circle and an inside circle, all right? Here it is again. Outside circle and inside circle, okay? Knights of Malta, religious Knights of Malta cross. And there it is again. But where is this at? It's in Pasadena. First Congregational Church in Pasadena. It's on churches right here in Pasadena. The Knights of Malta, religious Knights of Malta symbol. So, oh, and something else you might be interested to know. On all churches you'll find pointed arches on the doors. You go into a church with a pointed arch, and the windows are pointed arches. The pointed arches symbolize the female. It's the pointed arch of the female. And that's why the male, that's why they would never allow women to be priests in a church. because the philosophy which gave birth to what we call Roman Catholic or Western Christian civilization was based on the female arch, and the priest wears the robe, or the robe, which is the female dress. A robe is a female dress. And a priest wears a robe because spirituality in the ancient world, according to the ancient world, spirituality was always in the hands of females, not the males. Men were never thought to be holders of religion or spiritual creatures. They were the ones that went out and killed and raped and murdered and brought in the food. The women were the ones that nurtured the child, brought civilization to males, because if you take all males, you lose civilization. You need the female to civilize society. Yes?
The male compass, right? The male compass.
Oh, yeah. Compass of the male. It has to do with and that's why I said the priest represents, with the long robe, he's representing female wisdom, or something the Greeks call it Pistis Sophia, female wisdom. And within the female wisdom, beneath is the male. So it all has to do with symbology. It all has to do with sex, the female, pointed arch, etc. All right, then we get up here to York Rite Freemasonry again, and here is the Masonic square, or the Masonic, the Malta, Knights of Malta cross. See the cross, that's the same one the Queen was wearing, right? The Knights of Malta cross. Here it is again. Let me go back to that. Order of Knights Templars. That's why in Israel today, you see the Jews going to the Wailing Wall, and you see this in the news. They're at the Wailing Wall. And it's the wall in which they wail. They wail because of the Wailing Wall was put there. It's a very difficult story to say in a couple of words, but that's where we get Wall Street, from the Wailing Wall. The Hebrews who wail on the Wailing Wall of Wall Street. It has to do with symbolism, which goes back to Solomon's Temple. Solomon's Temple was the symbol and the home of what is called the Knights Templars, Knights of the Temple. That's why Steven Spielberg has the Jedi Knights, and the Empire Strikes Back and the Jedi Knight. Incidentally, according to, if you go to the library and look up the Masonic folklore, you will see that the spiritual connection between the Freemasons of the York Rite and God was a little spiritual creature they call Yoda, with little pointed ears, and he was a magician. They call him Yoda. Yoda comes from Yoda, or Judah. It has to do with Judah, Yoda, the Knights of Malta, and whatever. You could make a whole study out of any of this. You could make a 3-hour lecture out of every single thing I'm saying. You could spend hours on it, but I'm just throwing all of this stuff in just to show you that there are connections that can be made. Anyway, the Knights of Malta with their Maltese cross. Here's another Knights of Malta, 33rd degree Freemason with the Knights of Malta. Okay. Here's the same one on Masters of the Universe. Right. That's what they intend to be, is Masters of the Universe. I mean, hell, they own the Earth. Now they're going for the universe, right? Now they want to go out to other stars, moon, own the whole universe. Masters of the universe. Blonde hair, Aryan. Remember Hitler with the blonde hair, Aryan. Knights of Malta, Catholic Church, kill the Jews. Hey, it's all connected. Right? Okay? You got the Knights of Malta again. And I'm drawing your attention to this strange configuration here because you'll see it again in the fire department. LA Fire Department has the Knights of Malta. Because the fire department, the police department, sheriff's department, mayor's department, and everybody else's department is all Masonic, the whole thing. We are in the hands of a very powerful secret society, and we call it law. Actually, it's nothing more than secret societies who have totally taken us over. And we just go along to get along because we're too ignorant and too frightened to death to do anything we did know. Yes?
Part of the refugees
Yeah, on a red background. The Knights of Malta are a Gentile Roman Freemasonic order coming out of the old Roman Empire, which was the collective power of the old world of Europe, because Europe was dominated by Rome. And so the Knights of Malta is a symbol for a Masonic order coming out of the old world order of Europe, and it was called the Knights of Malta, and because it goes back to an old priesthood on the island of Malta. Malta was a symbol many, many, many years ago, over 2,000 years ago in the Roman Empire. Let me think of something that's comparable. You know, there are certain places in our country that are hot spots for occultism. And in the Roman Empire, Malta, the island of Malta, was a place where you go there, and those people are really off the wall out there. They got strange stuff going on there, occults and all that kind of stuff. So Malta was always a symbol for occultism in the ancient world. And so the Romans had what they called the Knights of Malta, the knights who operate. Yes?
Different than the Illuminati?
No, the Illuminati, all right. The Illuminati is a relatively new phenomena in Freemasonry. It came in 1776 with Adam Weishaupt. But what the Illuminati was merely a course correction in Freemasonry. There was the Roman world under the Roman domination of Europe, Freemasonic orders. There was the coming out of Spain, France, the coming of what is called York Rite or Scottish Rite Freemasonry, England, Spain, France, coming into America to found a new world order, but above the two orders, which is the eagle with the double head, implying that both sides, both the old world order and the new world order, are being dominated by a third one. And that's what Ian Fleming in his James Bond novels was talking about, that there's a third power over the two, and it's controlling both. And that's the Illuminati. No, this is just showing the Knights of Malta symbol, which is Roman Freemasonry, but it shows how they don't mind using both sides, as long as you remember that America is a York Scottish Rite country. They don't, you know, they're symbols of Freemasonry, and what I have to do is I have to show you their works, their reference works that explain these symbols and how they connect, because they're very open with it. They explain their symbols and how they got here and what they mean and why they allow them to be used.
I think the part of confusion, though, is that they're all working together for the same goal.
Yes.
Or are they in
No, they're all working together for the same goal. The same goal is to create chaos, to have Adolf Hitler fight the United States, have Russia fight America, have China fight. All of this stuff is being orchestrated from a higher Masonic order. Well, that's the thing that there's been a lot of conjecture on. There's been a lot of books written about that. Ian Fleming wrote his James Bond novels. He called it Spectre. Remember, the secret petting the cat, and he's putting the West against the East all the time. And Ian Fleming, when he was interviewed on David Frost's show, they asked him, who is this specter, this third power group that's always getting the East and the West at war? And he said, England and America and the Western world are aware that there is a third power in the world that pits the two together. And that is operating, he said, out of Switzerland. That's what I think is why Switzerland is a neutral country, because that's where the big boys live. And you don't mess with, yes, the World Bank. As a matter of fact, in Switzerland, there's a large building in one of the cities of Switzerland, and I had a big color picture of it. I don't have it on slides now. There's a large building in a big downtown city in Switzerland, and it's a round, perfectly round building, enormous inside. Look like maybe 2 or 3 blocks, round circle, and it's divided into equal three, into an equal triangle. And 1/3 is it says in the article, 1/3 of the building, and then when you fly over it, you can see it. It's like the peace symbol. That's why the peace symbol was the Y within the circle, okay? It was called in runic, in the old German runic, it was called the peace symbol. anyway. The one-third of that building in Switzerland is the world headquarters for the United Nations. One-third of the other third is the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the other third is the world headquarters for Freemasonry, the Masonic World Congress. So you got the Masonic World Congress, World Government, United Nations, and the World Bank. This way they keep it all together. You don't have to go out for coffee. You can all work together, right there together, right? Yeah, it's incredible. Here again, I show you the Pope with the Jewish yarmulke. There's a reason why the Pope wears a yarmulke. That's a Jewish headdress. That has nothing to do with God. It has to do with Jewish Freemasonry. The reason why he is called a cardinal, the word cardinal means a hinge on a door. That's what the word means in Latin, a hinge. And the Pope, the word Pope comes from Papa, which is Latin, which means the door to the mysteries. He is the one that you must go through to open up the mystery of God. So therefore, he's the door and he's the hinge. The cardinals are the hinge for the door. And it goes all the way back to Babylon. It goes back to the old ancient Babylonian and mystical religions. Here's a document I got from a Freemasonic friend of mine who got me this document. It's a color. It was on the wall, and I asked him if he had a color reproduction of it. He did. He gave it to me. And it shows some of the different, what is called the different divisions of Freemasonry throughout Europe, and what they mean and how these guys are all connected together. You know, from England to France to Italy, Spain, it's all being connected. It's all being orchestrated. And yes,
What is the title of the talk referred to?
I'm not even sure what those words are. That one? I sat and talked to the librarian, the chief librarian. His name was Cook. He was the one that had a copy of this, and he was just explaining how these were the different concordant orders of Freemasonry and some of the different symbols that are used throughout Europe. I thought it was interesting when I first saw it because that looks like the Pope's tiara, the Pope's diadem, right? And that looks like the Pope's diadem, and I called that to his attention. He said, yes, it is. That's the papal headdress. With the, so what we're talking about here is free. Huh? Yeah.
But I mean the word casserole. That's the top.
No, I understand. I'm saying I don't read the language. That's what I'm saying. Do you read it? No, I don't either. I forgot what the guy was saying. He was, he was an old man. He was telling me all this stuff, and he was writing it all down for me. And I J-E-U, de la,
Casserole, meaning the group.
probably. That probably has something to do with it.
The plan.
Yeah. Well, whatever. Yeah, whatever. And he's part of the group and part of the plan. Of course. Because it's the state of the New York Empire. Right. The Empire Strikes Back. George Lucas. Oh, yeah. The more we change, the more we stay the same. Nothing new. Here it is again, the Vatican with the Masonic symbols. I'll run through this pretty quick. I don't want you to get too bored. But anyway, here's a papal headdress. But these are all accoutrements for Judaism, right? The Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat. And here's the Jewish high priest. And he's wearing the same one you just saw, which was worn by the Pope. The Pope's headdress. But we're talking Jewish here. We're not talking Roman Catholic. Unless, of course, you understand Roman Catholic is Jewish. Here is Freemasonry, and off of a page it's called Chapter Jewels of Freemasonry. Symbols of the different departments of Freemasonry. And up here you'll see the king, the scribe, and the high priest. And for the high priest, what do you have is the Pope's headdress. The Pope is the high priest of Freemasonry. And the King of England, he's in there too. But that's why there was a war between the King of England, King Henry VIII, had a falling out with the Pope. And the King Henry said to the Pope, I don't like the way you're doing things here because you're hanging out too much with the wrong kind of people, and so our Knights of the Order of York are not happy with you, And so we're going to break it off. We don't want you ruling England anymore. So from here on out, we're going to be king of the kingdom. The keys are going to be those keys on the bottom of the papacy on the Masonic. Well, let me go back and show it to you. Come on, one more time. Where are the keys? I thought the keys were okay. Anyway, on the paper, you see, you might see it here yet. There's always those two large keys under the Pope's symbol. I think that's where we get the Florida keys from, because if you understand what the word keys and what it means, Florida keys, I think, is connected to it. Because those people down there in the Florida Keys, better know who those people are. The Florida Keys are a home for some of the most powerful mobsters the world has ever known. They got a whole thing down there, and if you understood how many millions and millions of dollars, I mean countless millions of dollars, went into just building that highway from the coast of Florida all the way out to the Keys. That is an astronomical feat for the military, and the military was in charge of doing that. The Seabees laid it all out, and the military laid out that, and if you've ever gone down there, that highway is a beautiful highway going way out, as far out as the eye can see.
75 miles.
Right. Now, how much did that cost? And how come you put it out there? For who? So, yeah. Uh-huh. They didn't put it out there for me. I don't live there. 175-mile bridge out in the middle of nowhere. And I don't mean no little platoon thing. I mean a beautiful bridge going all the way out to those islands, and there are hundreds of islands out there. Why? Because those families that live out there were friends like Bibi Rebozo, the friends of Nixon. Always see the presidents going down to the Florida Keys. That's because these guys who are the powers behind this live out there in the Keys on those islands by themselves, like in the Sean Connery, James Bond movies. These guys are absolutely horrendous. They got a thing going that will not stop. And we have no idea in the world what's going on. That's why they call it the Florida Keys. Again, I say within the triangle of Freemasonry, you have the Pope's hat. Here is the breastplate of righteousness for the Jewish high priest, the high priest of Judaism, with the Masonic apron, the fleur-de-lis, which is a symbol of France, which is a symbol of sex, joining the male and female, and he's wearing the Pope's headdress, okay? Here's another Masonic apron, and on the apron you will see King of England, the Pope. Incidentally, that's why when you go to college, you get out of high school, when you graduate from high school and college, you wear a black robe, same black robe that a priest wears. It's the same black robe that a judge wears. And the square you wear on your head when graduating is called a martyr board. It's a square of Freemasonry. So if you go to church and you do things right and you stay in line, you're square. Yeah. And here is what we call the Royal Arch Freemasonry, which we saw before, Royal Arch. And that stone right in the middle that holds the two sides of a Royal Arch together is called a keystone. That's why Pennsylvania is called a keystone state. Because Pennsylvania is where the Constitution was signed, where these guys put this whole thing together. That was the Keystone State, where the keystone was finally dropped between the 6 and the 6, and the one in the middle makes 13, the 13 colonies, the Keystone State. Again, it says, for the Royal Arch Chapter, note the headdress of the principals. We're talking about the Royal Arch Chapter, right? And note the headdress, again, the Pope, the King of England. Now, we have something here, these symbols up here, this is what is called, and I can't remember if it's a 60 or a 90, but I'll do it again. This is I think the 60-degree square of Freemasonry with the G for geometry in the middle. The 60-degree, and incidentally, the reason why it's like this is because of the triangle pointing down and the triangle pointing up. You know, if you cross them, then it becomes a Star of David. That's why it's there that way. Yeah, that's it. And that's according to the Masonic, the Masonic books. They say it's actually a takeoff on the Masonic Star of David. triangle up and triangle down, but this is the 60-degree square. All right. On them, anytime you see like the Olympic stars or any of these other, they always have the ribbon, right? Anytime you get an award from the government, it's on a ribbon. That's called a 90-degree square. That's a square, but it's at the 90th degree, a 90-degree square, okay? You have to keep that in mind because that's a Masonic square, okay? Here it is, the 60-degree and the 90-degree. Okay, I'll back it up. I was wrong. That's the 90-degree, and this is the 60-degree. 90-degree square, 60-degree square. Well, it has to do with, figures the square of the 90-degree, and here's the square progress of the 60-degree, okay? The 60 and the 90 degrees. And what are we talking about here? We're talking about Freemasonry, okay? Here it is again. The same as the square of Freemasonry. Here you see it, the 90 degree and the 60 degree in churches. You know. So when you see these choirs, singers in churches, they're wearing the square of Freemasonry on them. And it's only appropriate because they're worshiping the Masonic God. Here is St. Louis at Jerusalem. According to, I don't know if this you can't see this too well, but it says St. Louis at Jerusalem. According to Masonic history, the man who first captured Jerusalem for the Knights Templars was St. Louis. Well, they honor St. Louis with the Royal Arch in St. Louis, the Royal Arch. Yeah, in St. Louis, the Royal Arch degree of Freemasonry. I mean, these guys are good. They do all this stuff and crap in front of you, and you have no idea what. Yeah.
We look at all these things and have absolutely
No idea in the world. It's all connected. There's nothing happening by chance. And there's no problem with economics in this country. There's no problem with lawlessness in this country. There's no problem with anything. This is the strongest, most powerful nation on the face of the earth. So if there's any problems, it's because they are causing the problem to keep you agitated and frightened and scared and in control. Ordo ab chaos. Here's something called the Summit of the Arch. This is from a State Department bulletin. And here it's, I don't know if you can see that, the reading. It's the meeting of all of the top criminal families in the world. You know, the Germans, the American, Margaret Thatcher. These are all the heads of state in the Western world. And it's the giant glass pyramid. Of course, they would have their picture taken in front of the pyramid in France, and that's why always in any great wars and all the time of world trouble, you always have to have a Paris Peace Conference. You know, in Vietnam and Korea, you always go to Paris because Paris is the home of the French Grand Orient Temple Masons, right? And so here you got the Summit of the Arch. Why would they call this the Summit of the Arch? For the Western world's financial and the leaders of the Western world. Here's a little Masonic library to show you how it's connected with religion. We got Masonry, Mormonism, and Freemasonry from the Masonic Lodge Publishing. So Mormons are founded by, organized by, directed by, and financed by the Freemasons. Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, the two leaders of the Mormon Church, were both 32nd degree Freemasons in the Scottish Rite. There's another book, The Relationship of Mormonism and Freemasonry. Here's Mormonism and Masonry. Freemasonry in the Book of Mormon. Here's that's why in Utah we have Zion National Park. Zion National Park with the Great White Throne. Incidentally, it's not black throne, it's a white throne. And that's why America is ruled from the White House. It's not a brown house or a yellow house, it's the White House. Okay, and that's because England is ruled from what is called Whitehall. Whitehall is the central power of England, Whitehall.
Do you think there was any passion with the salamander killing that they had in 87
I'm telling you, the people who are running this country are the most powerful criminals the world's ever known. Here's, oh, wait a minute. Should we take a break? Okay, let me back it up then. Huh? Oh, okay. That way we'll make it work out all right on the tape, okay? So, all right, let's get past this one thing and then we'll take a break. Masonic orders of fraternity. This is taken from a Masonic document. The direct descent of the essential program of the esoteric schools was entrusted to groups already well conditioned for the work. The guilds, trade unions, similar protective and benevolent societies have been internally strengthened by the introduction of a new learning. The advancement of the plan required an enlargement of the boundaries of the philosophical overstate. A world fraternity was needed, sustained by a deep and broad program of education according to the method. There's a method to this education that we're getting. Such a fraternity could not immediately include all men, but could unite the activities of certain kinds of men regardless of their racial or religious beliefs or the nations in which they dwelt. Here's the point. These were the men of towardness, those sons of tomorrow whose symbol was the blazing sun rising over the mountains of the east. Remember Shell, oil, okay? What it's talking about is that the conspiracy already had knowledge that the guilds, the trade unions, similar protective and benevolent societies were perfect grounds for control. So you set up the Red Cross, you set up the Painters Union, you set up these unions and benevolent societies and this and that, set them all up to ostensibly, of course, protect the people, to help the people, and protection, when in fact they're being organized and directed to control the people. And it does, and such a fraternity could not immediately, we can't explain this conspiracy to everybody, we can't count in everybody on this, but we could unite certain kinds of men. As long as we all understand what's going on here, we could unite these different organizations together. And the symbol for these men, these were the men of towardness, whose sons of tomorrow, these sons of tomorrow, whose symbol was a blazing sun rising over the mountains of the east. That's important. These were the men of towardness, the sons of tomorrow, whose symbol was the blazing sun rising over the mountains of the east. While it is difficult to trace the elements of a pattern never intended to be obvious, the broad shape of a design is dimly apparent, the invisible empire. So it's saying it's very difficult to put all of this together. But the reason why it's difficult is it was never intended to be obvious anyway. I mean, if you're on the inside, you know there's a design, but on the outside, it's not supposed to be obvious. Okay? Here's where they're getting this from. This is from the old Assyrian Babylonian mythology. The sunrise, the god Shemesh appears above the mountains of the east. Here's God's sun rising over the mountains of the east. That goes all the way back to Babylon. Here it is in Hebrew theology, the sun rising, Israelites at Mount Sinai. The sun rising over the east. Shell, the sun. The sun rising on Hebrew Jewish Freemasonry. Here it is, the Kabbalah. We're talking about the Kabbalah, and here on the back on chapter 9 is called the way of one who is caught between the suns of a dying and a dawning day. The one caught between the one who, no wait a minute, the way of the one who is caught between the suns, implying that there's two suns. There's a sun going down and a new sun coming up. The old sun of the old world order, Rome, is going down. Vatican, Europe, is the old sun, and it's going down, and there's a new sun coming up on America. There's a dawn of a new day for America. It's going to be the king of the world now. 1,000 points of light. All right, so what we're talking about here is between the suns of a dying and dawning day. George Washington said, here's his chair, where he signed that says, "But now at length I have the happiness to know it is a rising and not a setting sun." I now at length have the happiness to know that it is a rising and not a setting sun. So Washington understood. This is a priceless relic of the Constitutional Convention, the rising sun chair of George Washington. Huh? Yeah, with the Fijian cap, yeah. As a matter of fact, yeah, let me go back on that. The Phrygian cap, that's the old cap of the Phrygians. Huh? And the reason why, I mean, I could get into this too, I'm not going to right now, but there's a reason why. We'll get into that another time. That's very interesting too, the Phrygian cap. Here's a book by James Billington, Fire in the Minds of Men. It traces the course of the revolutionary faith from its earliest origins in occult Freemasonry to the allegedly scientific Marxism of today. So when you hear things about scientific Marxism, communism, the Soviet Union, and all of that, what we're talking about, scientific Marxism, is actually had its earliest origins in occult Freemasonry. And James Billington has written some brilliant books. He is a Rhodes Scholar, like the new president. He's a Rhodes Scholar also. He teaches at Oxford. He's probably taught our new president. He is a really establishment boy. This guy is well thought of by all the gangsters and top of the governments of the world. He's their boy. And he is a very, very brilliant man. He's put out some very thick books on the Illuminati and Masonic. This whole book is dealing with the Masonic symbols and emblems that are used throughout the world and what they mean, and what a tremendous book. But I was showing you this only because in relation to Marxism, connecting it with the origins in Freemasonry, okay? Again, here is a page from an encyclopedia on Russia, and over here you have the flag and this national coat of arms. The national coat of arms talks about the rising sun is a symbol of the dawning of the new day of communism. New day is in quotes, okay? The rising sun is a symbol of the dawning of the new day of communism, all right? This symbol came out for the Soviet Union 1930s, late 30s, mid to late 30s. It originally came out at that time. In New York, we have the dawn of a new day, dawning of a new day of communism, and in New York we have for the World's Fair in 1939 the dawn of a new day. There's connections between the New York World's Fair and the coming of the Soviet Union. Somebody's trying to tell us something in New York. Sun rising in Russia, Soviet Union, sunrise. Here's the, what is it, half a dollar? Yeah, 50 cents. And here it says, she is moving toward the dawn of a new day, the sun rising for us. They put communism over there, it's rising for us now. Now we're coming into a communist system. We call it democratic, like the People's Democratic Republic of China, the People's Democratic Republic of Cuba, the People's Democratic Republic of Romania, and now we got the People's Democratic Republic of America. And nothing, and all Marxist communism is the same as the old Roman fascism. It's all totalitarian dictatorships, period. Here's Charles Tess Russell, founder of Jehovah's Witnesses. He's telling everybody the new day is dawning, preparing all the poor Jehovah's Witnesses for the dawn of a new day. Here is the Watchtower Bible Tract Society of Pennsylvania, Jehovah's Witnesses with the sun rising over the mountains of the east. Here's a Christian distributor for Christian materials called the New Day, sun rising over the mountains of the east. Christians have no idea in the world. All this stuff is being manipulated, presented to them, and they have no idea in the world. And they're out there preparing the world to accept God's kingdom, Channel 40, and never realize the symbols of Channel 40 are Masonic, and all of their leaders are all Freemasons. It's too bad, but it goes back to, pride precedes the fall. When it is you think you have the whole truth and you're in tight with the Lord, that's when you've been had. Richard Nixon struck a coin for himself and called it the new day for America, the new dawn for peace. And that's what he did. Here's Liberia, the flag with the symbol for the rising sun on the flag, just to show you how it's used throughout the world. The sun which heralds a new day. Romania, their symbol is the sun, like the shell, the sun rising over the mountains of the east. The rising sun expresses the promise of a new day. Here's Mongolia. The horseman on horseback with the sun rising over the mountains stands for the nation's advance toward Malawi with the red sun. Malawi added the sun to symbolize the dawning of a new day for Africa, and it was. They killed a lot of people over there. And Afghanistan, there was a new dawn for Afghanistan. They broke that up and killed a lot of people. And here's on rings, high school rings, college rings, a new dawning, sun coming up. Here's the sun coming up on college rings and high school rings. There it is. Behold a new dawn, the sun coming up on the mountains of the east. I mean, hey, they control education, religion, politics, the police department, fire department, and Sears. I mean, let's face it, own and control the world you live in. It's the only game in town. You know, behold a new dawn. Kids wear these rings have no idea in the world what that means. How much more time do we have on the film? Good. A recurrent mythic model for revolutionaries, early romantics, and young Karl Marx and the Russians of Lenin's time was Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods for the use of mankind. I'll read it again. A recurrent mythic model for revolutionaries. A model for revolutionaries. And early romantics, young Karl Marx, and the Russians of Lenin's time was Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods of mankind. Prometheus. Here in New York, at Rockefeller Center, we have the Prometheus Fountain, the Masonic Square, Freemasonry, and in front of Rockefeller Center is Prometheus on the Promethean Fountain, who stole fire from God. And that's why during the Olympics you have they're running around with the torch. It's the torch of Prometheus, like the Statue of Liberty holds the torch of Prometheus. It's a symbol for the... Well, wait a minute. Yeah, I'm just going to... This is the end of it right here. The United Nations, I was saying today to one of you today that the post office, our postal service used to have on our post boxes on the street were red, white, and blue. Today they're just simply blue. They're just simply blue. Because blue is a symbol for Israel. It's a symbol, it's the national color of Israel, which is incidentally the same national color for, the international color for the United Nations. This color blue. This particular shade of blue has since become known as UN blue. This is UN blue. It comes from the old Grand Lodge of Freemasonry, the Grand Lodge blue. That's why it's called blue degree Freemasonry. The first 3 degrees of Freemasonry is called the blue degrees. That's why the United Nations is blue. When you go to college, you get a degree. Because that's the way you move in Freemasonry is by degrees. The 33rd degree, the 32nd degree, the 3rd degree. You go to college and get a degree because these people will teach you what you're supposed to know, not what you're not supposed to know. You're not supposed to think like this. They teach you what you're supposed to know. They teach you how to earn a living, not how to live. They teach you how to think, not to think, but how to think. And so that's why at college they call you an alumni, because you're an illumini. You are illuminated. You've been enlightened by the powers that be. And as long as you stay square and play on the square, you're going to do all right. As long as you don't go thinking too much. Is the end of the first section.